Hello everyone, this is part 14 of What If Naruto Was the Perfect Shinobi, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Orochimaru laughed and spoke to Kabuto in a patronizing saccharine tone, as though lecturing a slow child. His voice managed to get under the bespectacled shinobi's thick skin somewhat, though most observers wouldn't have noticed. Kabuto-kun was oh so scared when it came to disguising his emotions. One must be willing to react to changing circumstances, Kabuto-kun. His ever-increasing power is much too potent to be ignored. Anko-chan has indeed trained him well. And in the end, all her hard work will be to my ultimate advantage. Perhaps she hadn't trained him much at all, the Snake Man mused. The techniques that Naruto-kun had exhibited in their little battle were not ones that Anko-chan could have taught him unless she had made some drastic augmentations to her arsenal since abandoning his side, save the Senejashu and Kuchios. According to the summoner's mark the kid bore on his chest, he possessed the potential to even summon Manda. And that without the overall chakra enhancement that the cursed seal provided. More impressive still was Naruto-kun's ingenious little tangent on the hidden snake hand. Fire-breathing dragon snakes executing 6 grand fireballs in unison. All these accomplishments had been done more or less without a teacher to guide him. Orochimaru almost shivered with glee thinking about what power Naruto-kun could possess with the proper tutelage. His tutelage, and what would become his power. I've heard whisperings around the tower that you two met back in the woods. Orochimaru had almost expected to cross paths with Anko-chan again, though perhaps not quite as soon as what had taken place during the exams. The woman had somehow seen past his grass nin disguise much quicker than he had estimated. Had Anko-chan not been rash enough to assault him alone and had instead called in backup, the mad scientist might have even been hard-pressed to escape pursuit. Still, their encounter had worked to his overall advantage. Anko-chan's cries had lured Naruto-kun straight into the pale man's waiting hands. Orochimaru would make certain to quash those little heroic inclinations in him. He would not have his apprentice adhering to such naive ideals. We had such a splendid little reunion. Business cut our reminiscence short, however. Perhaps I should make a short visit to Mitarashi-chan. I hear she's still convalescing. The snake Sanin tapped his chin as he pondered the matter, soon reaching a decision. Don't bother with her. There might even be some value in letting her live. Despite her shortcomings, Anko-chan was still Orochimaru's creation, and the scientist in him ever so hated decay that which he had made. And besides, she might be able to serve his purposes one last time. Winning Naruto-kun to his side depended on severing the emotional bonds that he had created within this accursed village. No doubt Anko-chan would begin to distrust the brat now that he possessed the cursed seal, adding to the bitterness in his heart. Sarutobi's little plan would even advance Orochimaru's agenda in said regard, as he had managed to isolate the child. Through placing him inside the Black Ops, the old geezer had weakened the bonds between Naruto-kun and his genin comrades as well as with that worthless little kunoichi instructor whose name escaped him. Once the Gaki became entrenched in Anbu over the next month, those bonds would snap without the Snake Man even needing to tinker. The sole bond remaining was the one between Naruto-kun and Sarutobi. Orochimaru would sever that one right alongside the miserable old bastard's head. Seems like you've played right into my hands, Sarutobi-sensei. Kukaku. The medic nin nodded his acceptance and then bowed to the snake Sanin once more. I ought to be going, then. I have to arrange to deliver your will to our sooner contact. Meet with Baki-kun tomorrow night as planned, and then I have an additional errand I need run. Orochimaru turned his back to Kabuto and stuck his white hands inside his vest pockets. The sun shining overhead was much too bright, the snake man concluded. Without the shade that the covered path provided, it would have been most intolerable. But the snake Sanin would take some time to appreciate this splendid outdoor view while he could. After all, soon this land will be reduced to nothing but scorched earth and desolation. I want you to return to Sound Village with some new instructions. Let it be known that I would like Kimimaro-kun to come with our shinobi to participate in the invasion. There is a special person here in Konoha who I would very much like him to meet during the battle. Use whatever methods are needed to make certain he will be able to undertake this mission. The long-term impacts on his health are irrelevant. A shame about Kaguya Kimimaro. He had once been Orochimaru's brightest young prospect. The orphaned Mist Nin possessed such an intriguing bloodline limit, and had been the prevailing choice to become the Snake Sannin's next host. He was the sole person besides Anko-chan and now Naruto-kun to achieve Orochimaru's strongest cursed seal pair. His Chi no Juin was the natural counterpart to their Ten no Juin. But then he had contracted some exotic illness that had stumped even Kabuto-kun's SK to diagnose, much less treat. The disease was terminal, and soon enough Kimimaro-kun would perish. That was the reason behind Orochimaru's coming to Konoha in order to procure a new vessel in Sasuke-kun. But that Gaki was not prepared to harbor his soul, and now he had to seek a new option. Naruto-kun was not viable either due to the Ninetales. A new host would have to wait. Dealing with Konoha's destruction was the more important matter now. I presume you want to use Kimimaro-kun as a catalyst to revolve Naruto-kun's seal. Kabuto wore a little smirk that Orochimaru matched, though the snake man leaned with his back to the other. That sharp mind was what made the man worth keeping around despite his random defiant tendencies. You're so perceptive, Kabuto-kun. That is indeed what I intend to do. Since the last surviving Kaguya was soon to expire and his death couldn't be prevented, Orochimaru would allow the Sound Five's leader to serve one last purpose. Despite his terminal condition, Naruto-kun would never be able to overcome Kimimaro's might unless he pushed his strength to the absolute limit, and that meant drawing on the Juin once more. Despite being unable to cure him, Kabuto would be able to concoct some method or another to get Kimimaro revived and moving long enough to complete his last mission. Again, the Snake Sannin hated to see someone he'd put so much effort into be killed, but a rusting tool was little use to him, and as all strategic minds knew, sometimes even a valuable shogi piece or two had to be cast aside in order to enhance one's overall position on the board. Kimimaro's last act as Orochimaru's servant would be to serve as a meter to gauge his replacement's true potential. And unless the demon child could succeed in his little trial, he would not deserve to become the Snake Sannin's new apprentice. I understand, Orochimaru-sama. I'll leave as soon as I'm done with Baki-san. Orochimaru said nothing as Kabuto-kun withdrew. He would need to leave this place soon enough as well. There still remained in Suna a certain bothersome Kazekage who needed to be eliminated and replaced so that the Snake Man would be able to get close enough to Sarutobi when the time came to deliver the old buzzard to his doom. For now, however, he could spare a little longer to gaze upon this lush woodland that the Shodai Hokage had created and that Orochimaru would soon reduce to ash and cinders. Your time is coming to its end, Sarutobi. Both you and your beloved village will burn. Haruno Sakura has been rendered unconscious. Shusha. Sabaku no Temari. The pink-haired Kunoiki was a cringe-inducing sight, spine arched on Temari's Tessen case as she hung unmoving over the sides. Her plan to settle accounts with Ino during the actual tournament had come crashing down due to this insurmountable desert barricade. The Sand siblings and Team Kakashi had become somewhat well acquainted during the preliminaries. 2 matches prior, Temari's eldest brother had been beaten down hard in his match against an almost disturbed Uchiha Sasuke, and poor Sakura had had the subsequent bad luck to be matched with an incensed and overprotective Suna Kunoiki as her opponent. Temari had paid back Kankura's humiliating loss in spades, as the results made apparent. Sakura was out like a light and had been SD up in several places due to Temari's lethal Tessenjutsu-aided wind attacks. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, or something like that. During the match between those two, the medics again earned their keep when the Sound Zaku Abumi battled Akamaki Chuji. The Oto Genin won the battle but might have lost the war, knocking out and wounding the expanded Akamaki with his Zankukyokua, but also getting both his legs crushed underneath Chuji's meat tank technique minutes earlier in the contest. Naruto glanced at the remaining competitors. Kiba still hadn't competed, and neither had Hyuga Neji, and much worse, Sabaku no Gara. For the Mutsu Sake, the masked blonde sure hoped that the Inuzuka didn't get matched against the homicidal Ichibi container. At least the pearl-eyed genius wasn't apt to K the animal trainer. The computer then selected the 7th match. The next KOF match will be Rock Lee vs Inuzuka Kiba. Mini Guy clenched his arms with a loud shout to Naruto's general disdain. At last, it is now my turn to compete. Please watch me win, Guy-sensei. Look like we lucked out this time, Akamaru. See, sometimes it's good to wait a little. At least Naruto now had a name to place with Mato Guy's clone. The blonde wasn't sure whether to be relieved that Kiba hadn't gotten Gaara or irritated that these two overenthusiastic imbeciles now had one another to bellow at and with his ears stuck listening to them. Akamaru yipped in tune with Kiba as the pair leapt down and landed like an animal on both arms and legs in the arena, and Lee did the same landing with cat-like ease. The spandex-clad Genin bowed in respect to his opponent, smiling to show his shining white teeth. I am most honored to do battle with you, Inuzuka-kun. Let us have a good match. Kiba seed an indignant brow at the other shinobi's sportsmanlike comment, and retorted in his usual manner. Whatever, Dobe. I sure as hell ain't losing to some bowl-cut ballerina like you. Naruto would never let me live it down. At the Hokage's area, the lone Anbu Kunoichi was less than impressed with Kiba. The Inuzuka will lose this match. That kid's arrogance is sickening. Yugao spoke as though the match was over at that moment. Naruto wasn't inclined to agree with the older woman. Kiba taunted and insulted his opponents in order to get pumped to do battle. The dog user was perhaps prone to underestimating people on occasion, but the blonde envisioned him having little trouble taking down this idiot. Hell, Kiba could have taken him out with that combination jutsu with Akamaru that he had. Knowing this, Naruto chose to take the chance to get a little back on Azuki and baited her. Since you're so convinced, let's make a little bet on it. The Kunoichi glanced over at him through her mask. You should know better than to be biased towards your old teammates. And to make certain you learn said lesson, I'll accept that wager. Loser has to shadow the winner on rounds until the third exam. That would amount to a month's extra patrols. Naruto nodded his acceptance. Rock Lee's visage became set in grim determination as he adopted a tight practice Tekken stance. Kiba sneered and hunched over with his hands clawed. At that moment Naruto became less convinced about the certain outcome. Though the blonde was not a taijutsu expert, he did have enough experience in general to know that Lee was one. Kiba didn't, to his detriment. You'd better be good for it, mutt. Or else I'm taking it out of your ass. Ha! I'll take this S-last to the cleaners in one attack. Kiba lunged at Lee, who waited in place to meet the attack. Lee swayed back to evade the Inuzuka's initial claw strike, ducking under the second and countering with a strong upward thrust kick that sent Kiba sailing through the air and crashing in a heap near where Akamaru was waiting. The small dog growled at Lee but could do little else. The animal trainer groaned and stood back up, then baring his canines at his opponent with a snarl. That hurt, asshole. Come on Akamaru, it's your turn now. Juujin Bunshin. Akamaru turned into another Kiba and the two charged Lee in unison. The green-clad Genin managed to block and evade their tandem attacks well enough, but the two managed to keep him too preoccupied to counterattack. Lee retreated back to create some room between him and his opponents and took a deep breath. One Kiba, which the chameleon-masked Naruto assumed had to be the real one unless Akamaru could now speak human language somehow, taunted the team's sixth member. Come on, man. I'm not even breaking a sweat. You ought to quit and go home now. Lee allowed the insult to roll over him, and returned with a competitive smile. Those who boast the loudest tend to be the weakest. Kiba glowered at Lee and cracked his N in an attempt to look intimidating. That's it. Your leotard-wearing ass is mine, Captain Spandex. Shikyaku no Jutsu. Kiba glowered and closed in with greater speed than the last time, Akamaru trailing behind with a growl. Lee closed his eyes as the pair approached and then reopened them as the Inuzuka dove at him with a low swipe, moving aside and executing a spinning sweep kick that sent Kiba spinning into the near wall. The other Kiba dove hired Guy's eccentric apprentice and the taijutsu specialist ducked under and waited until the humanized Akamaru landed to his other side, then leaping into the air to kick him into his master. Their heads cracked together, causing Akamaru to return to his normal appearance and whimper, and the rising Kiba to again lose his balance and crash onto the ground clutching his head. Lee remained stoic in his stance, not giving in to arrogance. Okay, that wasn't so bad. But let's see you counter what you can't even see. Kiba reached with both hands into his coat pockets and withdrew several smoke bombs. The Inuzuka showed a canine grin and leapt into the wall, using chakra to attach with his legs and igniting and throwing the bombs all over the arena. The entire area soon became saturated with dense smoke to the extent that Naruto had to concentrate on Rock Lee's weak chakra signature to even know where he was. Kiba was still on the wall, but then leapt down into the smoke. One more time, Akamaru. Juujin Bunshin. The blonde's senses showed Kiba and an again beast-cloned Akamaru standing with Lee in a pincer. Rather than making an attempt to escape, the green-clad genin seemed content to wait and meet their attacks. Naruto could guess what was about to come now. Gatsuga. The smoke didn't impair Kiba a bit, who was able to use his nose and ears to track Lee's position within. This was the Inuzuka's world, and all Naruto could see was two blurs crashing into a slower target at high speeds, along with another stronger unmoving chakra source that had to be Hayat's, and he could hear Lee's pained noises on some occasions. To the Team 6 members' credit, he seemed able to avoid the bestial pair's piercing attacks to a certain extent, but it seemed that each time he dodged one Kiba's charge, the other then drilled into him at another angle. What Lee needed to do was escape and attempt to deal with them at a distance using whatever ranged ninjutsu he had in his repertoire. He was a sitting duck inside the smoke. Lee can't even hope to counter Kiba's speed with taijutsu. He needs to get out and... Sarutobi interrupted Naruto's muttered comment, exhaling his own smoke. He cannot. Rock Lee has a condition that makes him unable to use ninjutsu or genjutsu. The blonde didn't express his next thought, which was that Lee ought to quit as a shinobi while he was still ahead. With his condition, he would be rendered helpless to dispel an illusion when caught in one, or to shield against some ninjutsu technique that was too large to escape using sheer speed alone. Electing to specialize in one combat branch was all well and good, and several strong shinobi did, but being unable to use or even defend the others at all was certain to get a person killed in battle. Naruto almost respected the kid's obvious grit in wanting to succeed through his handicap, but he believed it to be a pipe dream. Perhaps losing this match to Kiba would be enough to convince Lee so. Then he has no chance to win this match. Sarutobi gave a knowing smile as the smoke cleared, revealing AB and battered Lee breathing hard and struggling to even remain standing and the two Inuzuka leering at him with identical canine grins. One Kiba reverted back into Akamaru, who sat and gave several victorious barks while wagging his tail in contentment. Looks like that's all you can take. Sit this one out, Akamaru. I'll take him down alone. Lee looked up at his sensei with a pleading expression, and Guy nodded with a smile. Naruto trailed his vision through his mask and saw Tenten leaning over the railing with her hands clasped in apparent concern. Neji was situated a bit behind her with his arms crossed and his Byakugan active staring down at the battle with near disgust. Lee took a long breath and then unwrapped the bandages on his wrists. Kiba watched on with an egotistical sneer as Lee made his match-ending preparations. Don't go thinking that's gonna change the outcome. Time's up, last. Chuga. Lee remained still as a statue, large eyebrows creased in deep concentration as the spinning Inuzuka began his charge, this time aimed right at his chest. As he was about to make contact, Lee lashed out with both arms and caught him, halting his advance on the spot. The taijutsu specialist ducked low and kicked Kiba high into the air, then leaping right alongside him mirroring his path. Lee's path carried him behind the airborne dog user, who was too stunned to counter him. This is it is now, or never. Omote Renge. Lee's unwrapped bandages SN around Kiba, wrapping the Inuzuka in an inescapable bear hug. As he did so, his chakra spiked to several times its usual level, in a manner that Naruto couldn't understand as the genin had not taken a soldier pill or something similar. With a loud battle shout, Lee took Kiba down with him and executed a sickening spinning pile driver that caused the ground to shatter on impact. With all that chakra behind the move, the blonde almost didn't even want to look at the results. When the dust cleared, an almost broken Lee was on a knee panting and Kiba was impaled within the rubble like a lawn dart. The Inuzuka slumped over onto his side and somehow stood again, and staggered around a little with a dazed expression and no apparent destination, and at last crashed down into a beaten heap. Lee managed to regain his upright position, even though his entire demeanor indicated that he was in massive pain. Inuzuka Kiba cannot continue. Shusha. Rock Lee. A smiling Lee bent down and helped Kiba, slinging the dog user's arm over his shoulders. Akamaru whined at his master's pain and trailed behind them. The blonde decided that it had been a good thing that Lee had chosen to land where Tenten's steel funnel had weakened the ground earlier, or else the Inuzuka might well have been killed. I apologize, Inuzuka-kun. But there is still someone who I must meet in this tournament. To prove that hard work can overcome natural talent, I could not lose this bout. I would consider it a great honor to accept a rematch sometime. Kiba managed a guttural M in response. All that sportsmanship mess was still lost on Naruto. He couldn't think about a battle in such terms. K or be Ked was the combat that the demon container knew. Still, the match's outcome was a surprise. The blonde would never have guessed that Ino would advance and Kiba would lose. He had assumed the exact opposite in the beginning. He placed the Inuzuka within the top tier among the exhibition round competitors, with Gaara, Neji and Sasuke as the ones strong and scared enough to have a decent chance at taking him down. He should have known better than to make conclusions based on Lee's eccentric appearance alone. I cannot believe that Gai-san was so reckless to teach the Forbidden Lotus to a genin. Yugao was staring into the viewing area at Mato Gai, and she didn't look to be alone in her disapproving opinion. The spandex-clad instructor and his eternal rival Kakashi were now embroiled in a heated argument that looked as though it might come to blows. Hitaki's Sharingan was exposed and blazing. Kurenai was making an attempt at mediating, though she didn't seem all that pleased with Guy either. Naruto didn't know about this Forbidden Lotus, but he was able to surmise that it was a kamikaze technique based on how much damage it had done to Lee. Naruto hadn't seen it listed on the Kinjutsu scroll he had read all those months ago. Though rather intrigued, the Anbu chose not to ask the Sandaime to explain the technique in greater detail, doubting that the old man would approve. The Hokage smoked his tobacco as he addressed Yugao. I gave Guy the permission. That lad is going to need whatever advantages he can get. While Yugao still wasn't pleased, the Anbu Kunoichi didn't dare to argue with the Sandaime. At least she seemed to have neglected to remember their wager in her anger. Naruto sure as hell wasn't going to be the one to remind the woman. The scoreboard made its next selection, which was Nara Shikamaru and no opponent. Hayat then explained that since there were 2 matches and 1 odd man remaining, that a random candidate would receive an automatic pass into the 3rd exam. Shikamaru greeted his good luck with a lackadaisical smirk, while the other genin in the room and more than one instructor as well looked to be prepared to consume raw venison. The electronic device went through the routine again. Naruto watched as it stopped on a single name and took a split second longer to decide the other. The next to last match will be Sabaku no Gaara versus Dosu Kinuta. The blonde glanced at the Sand siblings at once. Gaara seemed to be more deranged than normal, as though such a word could ever be applied to the redhead, as he prowled down into the arena with his arms crossed. The Ichibi container radiated a mouse aura and he waited in his place, head seed staring down his opponent through maddened emerald green eyes. Kinuta, the bandaged Oto Genin squad leader, slouched over and grasped his metallic gauntlet and seemed to be much less intimidated than he should in Naruto's opinion. This is an interesting prospect. We have the crazed animal against his team leader. Sarutobi smirked through his pipe as he peered over at the 2 opposing hostile genin. Gaara stood in his place with an imperious expression, as though daring the ponderous Dosu to come and attack him. That's true. I have no idea how such a convenient pairing could have been selected. Naruto crossed his arms and prepared to watch the S when the demon's voice popped into his mind. It's about time the Shukaku brat fought. I didn't know you were even watching this tournament. The Kitsune snorted at the comment, as though it were too ridiculous to even consider. I haven't been. I sensed the Desert Gaki's king intent and woke up. Those other matches aren't worth my attention. Dosu attacked without hesitation Gaara as the match began, running towards the Kazekige's youngest son and throwing a hard punch with his gauntlet. The attack would never ell the Suna Genin's shielding mechanism, Naruto knew, and thus he wasn't even surprised in the least when the sand in Gaara's gourd intercepted and blocked the incoming blow. Sabaku no Gaara's contemptuous glare remained unchanged, but then the Ichibi no Tanuki host staggered back clutching at his head in pain. Fuhuhu, that stinking sand can block a punch, but the sound waves still pass through. This power that our great leader has granted me, could even incapacitate a subhuman monster like you, Sabaku no Gaara. Gaara's emerald eyes turned bloodshot, as a massive king intent rolled over and stopped Dosu cold in his tracks. The redhead's hand clawed at his brow, covering his red tattoo. Whatever Kinuta had done hadn't been enough to draw blood, but Naruto now remembered reading in the Ichibi carrier's dossier that he had never even been wounded on a mission. Pain would then have to be a brand new experience, And to postulate that Sabaku no Gaara was not amused would be a grave understatement. The Ninetales was inclined to concur with his container's assessment. That fool is a man. Not that he ever had a chance to survive this. Yugao's reaction to Gaara came out as a breathless whisper. For her to be so surprised indicated to Naruto that not all Anbu had been apprised about the Suna Genin's condition. The blonde decided that it would be better on the whole not to tell the woman that he could express the same level and then some. Sarutobi's visage was grim but unwavering as he dragged on his pipe. The Hokage knew what was going to happen here and was resolved to do nothing about it. Hostile Shinobi would receive no quarter. For a mere child to possess such concentrated king intent, Kami-sama. The redhead single growled word carried a certain demonic undertone. His sand came in an onslaught and wrapped around Kinuta's legs. Gaara raised the Oto Genin and whipped him into the large stone statue below the scoreboard, and then into the ground. Dosu's head split open and began bleeding. He was beaten, but Hayate still did not halt the match. The sick examiner sent the Sandaime a subtle glance while Gaara hurled the Sound Nin squad leader into the air, where yet more sand chased down and enveloped him in a tight cocoon. Naruto knew what came next, watching with interest underneath his Anbu mask. Sabaku Sausu. The cocoon imploded, crushing Dosu like an ant. Blood rained down into the arena in a crimson shower. When the red storm ended and the drenched sand retreated back into Gaara's gourd, a stained and crunched Oto Hitai 8 clattered onto the ground alongside a useless metal lump that had once been Dosu Kinuta's sound gauntlet. The green-eyed sociopath walked back into the viewing area without waiting to hear the decision that never came. Naruto supposed that Hayate didn't think that it needed to be said. Not a soul protested the match ending. The Oto instructor had never returned, Zaku had been hauled to the tower's triage center to have his broken legs treated, and Kin smirked at her squad leader's non-existent remains without a single care in the world. On Gaara's side, both Kankuro and Temari wore agitated expressions, as did the Suna trio's brutish-looking instructor. That was uninspiring. I'll be going back to sleep now. Naruto bid the demon a silent parting as Hayate announced the next and last match. The last match in the preliminaries will be Hyuga Neji versus Hyuga Hinata. Hinata looked as though she wanted to sink through the cracks in the ground rather than have to battle against her kinsman. The girl's skin was even paler than usual and her pearl eyes were wide as saucers. Much the opposite, one might have thought Neji had been named heir to the clan moments ago. The long-haired shinobi smirked down at the girl. I'll give you one chance to surrender to me right now, cousin. You are destined to lose this match, so do the smart thing and avoid getting hurt in the process. The timid Hyuga heiress seemed to consider the proposal, and was on the point where she might do it. The two were close relations within their clan, or so it appeared. Hinata closed her eyes, and then opened them again and nodded in the negative. I cannot do that, Neji-Nisan. I did not make it here to give in now. Neji's domineering expression soured a little, his lips compressing into a tight scowl. I am not your brother, Hinata-sama. I am a mere slave. Pretending otherwise is an insult to us both. I am not your sister either, and so I will derive little pleasure in whipping you like an animal. However, you will stand aside right now, or else I'll hurt you. That explained much, Naruto mused. The two were blood cousins, but Neji was in the branch house. Despite that close tie and the elder Hyuga's much superior SKS, he could never have Hinata's position as the next clan head. He was a caged bird indeed. No wonder he bore so much resentment, but the blonde still thought that he had best be a little more discreet. Neji might be stronger, but his weaker cousin carried an ultimate trump card that she might be too meek to use under normal circumstances, but could when pushed too hard. Hinata shook her head again and relaxed into her Jukan stance. When she spoke, it was in a clear and calm voice as opposed to the pathetic stutter that Naruto had long since come to equate with her. Perhaps you will. I might be destined to lose, but I shall not run or hide. I will admit that I am weaker than you, but I am still shinobi, no less than you. Neji's scowl morphed into a twisted leer as he dropped into the same martial stance and activated his Byakugan. With a blonde a bit more aesthetic, he might have made the comment that the branch house member looked like an evil seraphim. Then so be it. I suppose I'll have to show you your place in the world. Hinata activated her dujutsu as a response. Both Hyuga charged one another as the match began, meeting in the middle and attacking with palm strikes. Thus went the battle. Neji and Hinata stood in place and exchanged blows in the gentle fist manner. The match seemed even enough at a quick glance, but a closer look revealed that Hinata was slowing ever so little with each successive exchange relative to her cousin. At last her guard broke down and Neji slammed a harsh strike into her stomach. The main house heiress skidded backwards and hunched over, breathing hard but still determined. See, I told you so. You cannot win, cousin. This battle serves no purpose. Quit. Hinata shook her head again as she re-entered her combat stance. Win or lose, I must stand strong to the bitter end. For that is the Nindu I've chosen. Neji let out a bitter laugh and sneered, but slid back into stance with practice ease. Pa, pathetic weaklings like you shouldn't bother with Nindu principles. The battle began again. Hinata did her best, but she was no match against the genius Neji. Once more, the heiress went down hard, this time due to a shot in the chest, almost too close to her heart. As though Neji was taunting her with what he could do to her at whatever time he chose, that he could K her and she would be powerless to stop him. As she struggled to rise again, her strong veneer began to crack, and her eyes averted to the ground. The gaze lasted but a moment, but Neji was able to see it. Now you're starting to understand. You're a disgrace to the Hyuga clan. Give in. Hinata sucked in a pained breath. Naruto was not in the least impressed with Neji. Despite his own past actions, the blonde was not a cruel or malicious individual past the extent that his occupation demanded. He had done terrible things at times and was more than willing to K in order to suit his needs, but he never took pleasure in maiming others unless those recipients had done something to earn said punishment, nor had he ever K'd another person without having some reason, on orders or otherwise. To K in order to survive and hurt in order to prosper was something basic to human nature and was more unavoidable still as a shinobi, but to harm the innocent without cause or to revel in their torment was what distinguished a person as being evil, at least in Naruto's viewpoint. Neji was little more than an overbearing punk, not having crossed the line, but the potential was there. The QB container had crossed over the line but once that he could recall, when he had met the crime boss Gato in the wave in cold blood and liked doing it, but even on that occasion the corrupt magnate had brought men to K both him and Team Asuma. Perhaps I only hold such opinions in order to justify my own gory past. Whatever. I don't regret what I've done to make it to where I am now. Naruto's hands were stained with more blood and death even then than Hyuga Neji's might ever be, but the blonde still looked down on the other with contempt. He could understand and respect using mind games to intimidate or anger an opponent and turn the tide in a tough battle, as Naruto had attempted to do against Haku back then, but the male Hyuga had no need to do so here. Neji held all conceivable advantages in this battle and could win in an instant. He was torturing Hinata, drawing this beating out and making a concerted attempt to break the girl, both in the physical and emotional sense. He tormented her because he could. Naruto had no love whatsoever towards Hyuga Hinata, no matter what she had once thought about him. Forget love, he didn't even like her. Her constant weakness repulsed him as much as it did her cousin, but she was still a human being and did not deserve this. Quote. Hinata met her leering kinsman one more time, and again went down hard. This time she sank to a knee clutching at her chest. Neji had again struck near her heart, this time closer to the vital organ than the last. The main house Hyuga let out a pained shriek as she went down. Neji strode to her and towered over the shivering girl. Hayate seemed to want to stop the match, but his hands were tied so long as Hinata was conscious and able to continue and unwilling to submit. You have nothing to achieve, Hinata-sama. Face it. No one loves you and no one wants you. Our whole clan wishes that you would disappear so that Hanabi-sama could become heiress. There's no reason not to stop now. No one is expecting you to win and no one will care when you don't win. Quote. Revulsion boiled in Naruto's stomach as he watched this. He looked at Hyuga Neji, and instead saw everything that he despised in one repugnant amalgamation. He saw Uchiha Sasuke, a spoiled little wastrel who had a traumatic past and expected those around him to bem his poor person. He saw the snake Sanin Orochimaru, a mortal man twisted into an inhuman monster because he couldn't help aspiring to seize something that wasn't his to have, and was all too willing to expose his cruel nature to those around him. But much worse than those two, he saw Uzumaki Naruto. The demon vessel saw what he would have become had he allowed those pigs in Konoha to break his sterling resolve and at long last given in to the negative emotions coursing through him even at that moment. The blonde indeed glimpsed his own inner demon, not the Kyuubi, and he hated. Naruto wanted to K once more, to unsheath his brand new assassination katana and christen it with ignoble Hyuga blood. Not to protect Hinata, as he couldn't have cared less about her. He wanted to break this vile mirror image, even though it looked nothing like him on the outside. To prove that he was not this monster that he had so long been told that he was and that he never would be. His own king intent began to leak out, and Naruto would have attacked had Sarutobi not checked him with a stern glare. The blonde bit out a curse, upset over having lost control over his emotions. The Hokage didn't reprimand him, as the old man was also regarding Neji with a severe expression. Don't bother standing again. Do so and I'll strike you. You should never have been born to begin with, so. Hinata shook with unshed tears as she deactivated her Byakugan. Neji took this to be a submissive sign proving that he had at last broken his cousin, and thus cancelled his own dujutsu. He was not prepared to have the girl cease her tremors and rise again despite her pain, and speak in a cold and commanding tone that Naruto had never heard her use. There was an almost vacant look in her eyes, though Naruto couldn't tell so well due to their monochromatic nature, almost as though she were in a trance-like state. That will be enough, servant. Neji reactivated his Byakugan and hissed in unadulterated rage at Hinata. You dare address me in such a manner, even though I have crushed you so. This match is still ongoing. And I shan't need the Byakugan or the gentle fist to show you how powerless you are. You are the one who will learn your place in the world, Neji, right here and right now. Cease squawking and return to your cage. Neji snarled until he heard the last sentence, and then his eyes widened in terror with his dujutsu still active. At that moment, the branch house member knew that he had pushed too hard. Hinata made one hand seal and her cousin sank to his knees screaming and clutching at his temples with both hands. Neji tore his high-tie loose and clawed at his brow where the Hyuga clanjuan was visible and burning due to its sudden activation. He bawled and howled until his cousin concluded that he had been punished enough and silenced the caged bird seal. Broken and unable to even move, Neji rolled over onto the ground twitching as though he had been electrocuted with near-lethal voltage. Hyuga Neji cannot continue this match. Shusha. Hyuga Hinata. Whatever strange trauma-induced state Hinata had been in, she reverted to normal once the match was over. The girl spent several seconds staring down at her shattered cousin, and then at last it sank in what she had done to him moments ago. The clan heiress began shedding tears as she tried to revive Neji in vain. As the medics rushed in one last time to rush him to the hospital, Hyuga Hinata broke down in TD sobs in the arena. Naruto didn't even have the heart to show disgust towards her at the moment, as she was doing it well enough to accommodate them both and then some. He held a neutral opinion towards how she had won the match. The branch house Juin was her ultimate trump card, and a true shinobi had to be willing to use all means available in order to succeed in his or her mission. Through sheer ruthlessness, the meek, or perhaps not so now, girl had scored a riveting upset over Konoha's most touted young genius shinobi since Uchiha Itachi. That's what can happen when the pressure becomes too much to handle, I guess. Sarutobi had put out his pipe as he gazed on the scene in the arena. Naruto heard a loud shriek and sensed some king intent in the viewing area. Looking over, he saw both Matogai and a still wincing Rock Lee working to restrain Tenten, who was screaming and struggling with all her might to get loose and assault Hinata to revenge Neji. The chameleon-masked Anbu almost wanted to be able to support her, but discovered that he couldn't. That bastard had earned everything that he had received and then some. He supposed that the bond between teammates was too strong to be ignored. Naruto might well have said someone who had done such a thing to the likewise arrogant and in some cases mean-spirited Kiba, no matter what the Inuzuka had done to deserve the pain, and so he could at least understand the Kunoichi's rage even though he would not go along with it. Yes, and remember that when such things happen, there must be great pain and remorse in the end, on both sides. The demon carrier got the Sandaim's hidden message loud and clear. Never give in to hate or bitterness, because the results would be so much more catastrophic than this little incident. Never let the demon within his heart, literal or otherwise, control him, or else all could be lost. But unbeknownst to the old man, Uzumaki Naruto had sworn long ago to serve and assist the Ninetales in breaking loose and walking the earth once more. His word could not be reneged upon once given. But he would not surrender to the demon either and become a monster. Not so long ago, he had been close to becoming such, but these recent months had brought him back towards the center and he would not return to that distant edge. The blonde doubted that he could ever be what would be termed as a good person, but he was determined at the least to never become a wicked man. At the least, these matches on the whole had given him much to consider. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.